Welcome to My Stable Relationship, an equestrian performance podcast where we will deep dive into the mindset and management challenges of ourselves and of our peers. Our discussions will allow you to learn from experts, encourage you to set audacious goals, overcome challenges, and develop actionable plans. Ready? Let's do this. Hi everyone, Lauren here, and thank you so much for tuning into the very first episode of My Stable Relationship. So I made a promise to myself not to re-record this podcast over and over. I tend to personally sit in a bit of perfectionism, so what you're hearing now is what you're going to get. It is absolutely freezing outside. Just as a quick update, my weather app tells me that it's minus 10 degrees Celsius, which I think converts to about 14 degrees Fahrenheit. Our winter hasn't even really started yet. It's just our first cold snap of the year. The keys to my farm buggy were frozen into the ignition barrel this morning. So I did the horses old school this morning. I used my old wheelbarrow and I walked quite a way with the feed to drop it at all the horses. So it has been a cold start. And right now I am inside, curled up with the heating and my two dogs. And we are super excited and ready to do this. So in this episode, I wanted to share a little bit about myself, about why I'm doing this show, and what my intentions are. My plan is that My Stable Relationship will be a space for us to deep dive into some of the fundamental performance coaching topics. So we will really focus on the mindset and management challenges of ourselves and of our peers. It's really about pulling back the curtain and speaking bravely about topics that we wouldn't usually, or that we haven't traditionally in the equestrian world, in the hopes that we can rethink our own mindset and management practices, that we can support each other as a community, and that we can learn from each other. Over the course of the podcast, we'll have a few different types of episodes that I'll release to you. So I just want to go through those with you now. The first types of episodes are just between you and I, where we will deep dive into a topic and follow up with some actionable tips that you can implement moving forward. The second types of episodes will be interviews with our peers in the equestrian industry. So I love meeting different people and I love learning about their backgrounds and how they came to be where they are today. And then I'm hoping that each of our guests will select and share with us like one or two topics, either mindset or personal management related, that we can really deep dive into and learn how they work through it personally. From this, we'll be able to derive some of those actionable tips again, which you can implement if the situation that our peer is speaking to resonates with you and your circumstances. The last type of episode that I'll be releasing is with experts in the fields of either mindset or management. So they can teach us and we can all learn best practice together. Once the podcast has been released each week, I'll spend the week on the socials, so on Instagram and Facebook, providing you any follow-up thoughts that I might have or any tips or strategies. So remember to follow along. It's at Journey of Equine, but the links will be in the show notes for you. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about me and how I discovered that performance coaching is for everyone, not just for competitive riders. And trust me, this story will come together at the end. So I am a qualified scientist, engineer, project manager, equestrian coach, and performance coach. I'm also a former event rider and competitor. I actually grew up in a professional dressage barn and with a family who used to compete in saddle seat equitation. So you can absolutely say that horses were in my blood. Back when I was at this dressage barn, I really loved the idea of owning a fancy warm blood because they were kind of all around me and everyone had one. But I found that off-the-track thoroughbreds were more within my budget. My family and I were recent migrants and I knew that we were already spending a lot of money on my equestrian pursuits and that a warm blood was off the table. So back then, my money-making scheme was to take thoroughbreds off the track and flip them by retraining them just for a little bit and selling them on. But my scheme was absolutely ruined the day that I met Bo. So Bo was, in my opinion at the time, untrainable and unsellable. He was the only horse who would charge across his yard and attack one of our stable hands. And on the very same day, he would faint from fear when I tied him in the wash bay. Bo definitely found his way to me as one of my very first teachers, and he very much tested both my mindset and my personal management skills. Where my other thoroughbreds did succeed was in the eventing and jumping arenas, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Bo stayed in my stables, but I had a few others still in work and still competing. And in my stables, I collected him a couple of years past Bo, but in my stables I had my favourite thoroughbred, Rio, who was one of the best cross-country partners I've ever had. And for those of you who have had a run cross-country, you know that the partnership between you and the horse and the willingness of the horse is such a crucial factor. And Rio was so good at taking control and saving my butt when I needed it or when the jumps had rattled me. But a few years ago, I went away on a corporate work trip just for 3 days. And when I returned, Rio was lame in the paddock. But when I say lame, he was like hobbling on 3 legs. So the vet and I undertook multiple tests over several weeks. But when we finally sent him away for an MRI, we learned that he had suffered a severe injury to his collateral ligament. Our vet concluded that he would never return to work and said that I had 2 options. But I couldn't bear to put my friend to sleep, so I started down an extensive rehabilitation path with him. So if you're tracking so far, that means I had Bo with his mental issues and requiring some extensive work. And I had Rio, who had just had this collateral ligament injury requiring physical rehabilitation. And I actually had 2 other old boys that we won't go into. So my stables were pretty full with horses requiring rehab work. But I continued on, and in the meantime, while I was rehabbing Rio, I bought and sold a few young thoroughbreds again. But I was really craving to get back into ring 1, we call it, which is the big show jumping ring here. And I really didn't want to take a baby all the way up the grades again. I was feeling a bit anxious and a bit impatient. So I just wanted a horse I could go straight into the ring on. To do that, I got a chance to take on Joe. So Joe was perfect on paper. He was a high-level jumper already. He had national awards. He was well-travelled, and he was the sweetest horse to handle. Like, if you need your grandmother to lead a horse, Joe is your guy. However, after our first season of jumping together, I became really concerned about how he responded to my aids, and I really wasn't keen on how he incorporated bucking and rearing into our rounds. And I just kept getting advice like, put a bigger bit on him. But that really wasn't serving me at the time, and I really felt like something was wrong, and so I pulled back from the competition scene altogether. And as a little side note, I actually had Joe extensively vet checked after that, and he has fused hocks, kissing spine, and he is degrading neurologically, we suspect because of ECVM. So my intuition was right, and that in itself is going to be such a super topic for one of our future podcasts, how to recognize and when to trust your own intuition. So anyway, there I was with a full stable block of horses that had physical or mental issues and all requiring rehabilitation. I had no active competition mount, and I had no ability to buy or take on any more. And any of you who have ever reached that critical limit of horses where you cannot afford any more money or time to take on any more, you know exactly how I was feeling. I was feeling lost and confused, stressed, upset, but most of all, I resented each and every one of those horses. And at this point, I really considered just quitting. But luckily, this was also the point in my life where I realized I needed my performance coach to help me. And this, everyone, is why I am so adamant that performance coaching is for all equestrians, not just for those of you who are actively competing. Because the moment in my life where I needed my performance coach the most was not during my competition season or my competition cycles. And this is different for everyone, so let me give you a few examples from some of my clients over the years. They have all found the need for performance coaching for so many different reasons. So a couple that come to mind. One was similar to my story. Their horse was unfortunately diagnosed with kissing spines, and they were trying to make some really critical decisions, as well as replan their life and time to fit in this new challenge. Another felt like they had lost their passion totally for riding, And we actually spent a lot of time focused not just on their equestrian pursuits, but also on their life away from horses. So we took more of a holistic approach to adapting their mindset and management across all areas. And after making some changes, we were actually able to help them not just refine their passion, but they actually started back at Adult Riding Club again, which has been super fabulous to see. Another was looking for support while they swapped disciplines and consequently swapped communities within the equestrian scene. Another was trying to fit in pleasure riding with a busy schedule, with work and kids and other pets and a mortgage and a partner, without feeling so guilty all of the time. And I could go on, but you absolutely get the point. Performance coaching is for everyone, not just for those of us who are competing. And if you aren't already convinced that performance coaching is for everyone, the last thing I want to do is remind you that your life outside of the arena significantly influences your state of being and your abilities inside of the arena. We are so good at putting the well-being and development of our horses first, but we totally forget or neglect that the well-being and development of ourselves should also be at the core of our training programs. So I also want to use this podcast episode to reclaim the word performance. Why? Because a lot of us feel that if we're not competing, the word performance doesn't even apply to us or what we're doing. And again, I'm here to tell you that the word performance is for all equestrians. So I looked up the definition, and yes, this is totally a thing I'm going to do at times during this podcast. And there are two definitions in the Oxford Dictionary. The first is an act of presenting a play, a concert, or another form of entertainment. So I will be the first to admit that my warm-up ring efforts with Rio were bordering on a form of entertainment for those watching. However, it was certainly not intentional, and I'm not quite sure that this definition 100% fits competitive or non-competitive equestrians. But the second definition I liked much more, and yes, I'm totally going to pick and choose. The second definition was an action or process of performing a task or function. A performance is the action or process of performing a task or function. And when we think of a performance like that, it's the perfect fit for all equestrian pursuits, competitive or not, because anytime we are with our horses, we are absolutely just performing a task or a function. So, to reiterate, we've established that performance coaching is for everyone, for all of us listening, and that the word performance actually just covers any task or function that we're undertaking. Now, if any of my client stories or my own story have resonated with you today, if you feel alone, lost, overwhelmed, stressed, unhappy, or like there must be more, if you're not enjoying working with your horse anymore, or if you're not finding the time to work with your horse, maybe you're tying your worth to your competition results, or you're just wanting to reach that next level, I would like to encourage you to do two things. And these are your first two actionable takeaways for this podcast. Number one, make sure to subscribe to this podcast on whatever platform you're using, so that between myself, our peers, and the experts that we bring on, we can hopefully bring some value to you, and we can help you with your mindset and personal management moving forward. And number two, this links into number one, I'd also like to encourage you to have a think about where you are now and where you want to be with your equestrian pursuits or in life more broadly. Now, you can keep this at a really high level, but this is super important for you to actually do, because I want to use this as your guide. And hopefully we will make steps towards closing some of the gap between your current and future state with our upcoming podcast episodes and topics. My goal is to help you more effectively train or rehabilitate your horse by focusing on your mindset and personal management. We will balance your life inside and outside of the arena so that you can find your version of a stable relationship. And with that, I just want to say thank you again for tuning into our very first episode. I am very excited to have you here. Please subscribe, follow along on the socials, the links will be in the show notes, and have a wonderful week, everyone. I will speak to you soon. Thank you so much for listening. My goal is to help you more effectively train or rehabilitate your horse by focusing on your mindset and management, both inside and outside of the arena. If this sounds like something you'd like one-on-one help with, or if you'd like to follow along for more, come and join me on Instagram or Facebook @Journey of Equine. The links will be in the show notes. Have a great week, everyone.